What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. It is time, man. It is time. The NFL draft is just a couple days away. We are going to be streaming the first round and the second day of the NFL draft on this channel, so make sure you guys are subscribed for that. But today, what I want to do is I want to go through my top 36 players as prospects and how I'm viewing them right now as we head into the NFL draft. Obviously, the draft capital, the landing spots, some of those things are going to change these rankings, but I want to let you guys know how I'm viewing these players as college prospects when it comes to film, analytic profiles, combine numbers, all of that good stuff. I want to show you guys how I'm looking at them today. So with that being said, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these players. All right, so as you can see, I got 7 tiers on the tier maker pulled up for today's episode. I got a total of the 36 players. We are going to be breaking them up into tiers and rankings. I don't want to focus too much on the overall ranking of the player, more so the tiers, because like I said, the landing spot, the draft capital, all of that stuff is going to change the individual rankings. But right now, this is how I'm viewing these players. And there is only one player in tier 1 in this draft class to me. It is going to be Ashton, Jeanty. So obviously, we don't need to dive deep into all of these players. We've done player takes for months now at this point as we've been preparing for the draft, but you guys know Jeanty is kind of the guy who's the locked-in 101. We think he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. It seems almost certain up at this point, and so I think Ashton, Jeanty to me doesn't matter. Superflex, tight end premium, 1 quarterback, 2 quarterback, doesn't matter. Jeanty is the 101. That's just the way that it's going to be. Now tier 2 is interesting because I think all of these players have some pretty high ceilings, and I am going to be looking at them as Cam Ward, Omarion, Hampton, TreVeyon, Henderson, and McMillan. So that is kind of my tier 2. This tier 2 of players, I think all of these guys have very, very good upside for fantasy football. I think Hampton and Henderson both can be top 12 running backs in fantasy football if they get into the right situations. McMillan has a super high ceiling to me. He's still my wide receiver 1 in the class despite some of the late buzz from a guy like Travis Hunter. And Cam Ward, he's the clear 101 at the quarterback position for me in this year's class. I think he's just a little bit more talented than a guy like Shedeur Sanders and Jaxson, and he is going to be the locked-in 101 in the NFL draft to the Tennessee Titans, so the draft capital is something we can easily project right now. I think all of these players are going to hear their names called on day 1, maybe day 2 if you think TreVeyon Henderson doesn't sneak into the first round, but I've heard buzz that he could possibly sneak into the first round. To me, all of these guys are going to be top 50 picks at the minimum. We do think that these are going to be elite fantasy football difference makers, so I have them all in my tier 2. Now going on to my tier 3, I have 5 players in this tier, and I think all of these guys are also very safe players in our rookie drafts. It's going to be Quinshon, Judkins, Travis Hunter, Emeka, Egbuka, Shedeur Sanders, and Tyler Warren. I think when you look at this tier, Judkins is another guy that should be drafted day 2. I think he's going to probably be a top 50 pick as well. Guys like Egbuka and Hunter, we think are going to be first round picks. Same with Tyler Warren. Shedeur Sanders is the only player I think that's a little bit different right now because it does feel like he's slipping in the NFL draft. At least that's what the media is telling us right now as we head into Thursday. But obviously Shedeur Sanders, if he lands in one of these situations with the New Orleans Saints or the Pittsburgh Steelers or some of these other places, I think he's still going to be one of these guys that we're going to be drafting in the first rounds of rookie drafts. And to me, these 10 guys that we're looking at right now from tier 1 to tier 3, these are the players that I want to get my hands on the most in fantasy football rookie drafts. All of these guys' analytic profiles are pretty clean. Most of these guys are very clean. I'd say maybe only 2 of the 10 that you're looking at have just a minor yellow flag or 2, but overall these players feel like the most can't miss prospects in the class, and I think all of these guys are going to be fantasy football contributors for us at the next level, which tells you how good this class is actually overall when you have 10 players that you feel pretty confident in drafting in those rookie drafts without feeling like you're taking on too much risk overall. Now this next tier, tier 4, to me is going to be a tier where these players have upside, but definitely not the same clean analytic profile as the guys above them. We're going to go to Luther Burden, obviously a high upside guy. Matthew Golden is in here, Jaxson Dart, Colston, Loveland, and Kaleb Johnson. That's the overall tier for me, and that takes us all the way to 15 players in the draft class. So getting you in those 12-man leagues to the 203 of players that you feel like have upside, some good confidence in drafting them overall, depending on the landing spots that they get into. But Burden, he's a player that I think is a very, very talented talented player. Obviously, the film last year wasn't great. He's a polarizing prospect this year. I still believe that he is a talented player. I have him right now as my wide receiver 4 in the class, with Matthew Golden coming in at 5. Dart's a player who's getting some first round buzz. Loveland's a player who we think is going to end up being a first round pick. And Kaleb Johnson, a little bit of a wild card here. Don't really know where he's going to go, but probably a day 2 guy, even if at worst it's a 3rd round pick. I want to see him get into a backfield where he can be the 1A in this backfield at minimum. I don't know if that's going to happen, but obviously that's what the draft capital is for. But as a prospect, he still is a pretty damn good running back, so I think I'm confident having him here at 15. But this tier right here is the upside tier, but there is just a tiny bit of risk with these guys compared to the guys above them. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. Right here is where the draft gets very, very interesting from a prospect evaluation standpoint, because I think that there is 2 tiers here, tier 5 and tier 6, that are massive groups of players that the draft capital in the landing spot is going to really change the way that you rank them. I'm going to tell you guys how I feel about them right now today, just based off of the college tape. But I do have Cam Scatabo, I have Dylan Sampson, Jalen Knoll, Trey Harris, Jalen Milroe, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Royals, and Bashal Tootin here in this tier 5. A lot to unpack in this tier, but this wide receiver class does have kind of a lot of ambiguousness to it. I think there's going to be a ton of different creators that you guys follow that have a ton of different rankings based on this class. Knoll does feel like he's been a riser as the draft process has gone on. I think Trey Harris is a boom bust type of option at the outside wide receiver spot. Same with Jaden Higgins as well. Jalen Royals, I think he's kind of polished as a wide receiver, but he didn't have the toughest of competition. So overall, you know, any of these guys, their ranking could change based on the landing spot in the draft capital. That can be said for the running backs in here as well. Scatabo, Sampson, Tootin, all of these guys have some of the traits that I think you want to find out of a fantasy football relevant running back. Sampson has a lot of juice, same with Tootin. Scatabo, he has a lot of production there at Arizona State last year in 2024. And all of these guys are in the conversation to me to maybe sneak into day 2 where they are a 3rd round pick. So I think any of these guys could end up being very fantasy football relevant, but if Tootin was the one who was drafted the highest out of all of these guys, I wouldn't be surprised to see him jump all the way from where he is right now as a prospect, number 23 in my ranks, all the way to 16 where Cam Scatabo is. So that's the reason why I want us to look at these rankings in the tiers and not focus specifically on where that player is within the tier. So just focus on the tiers themselves, because the landing spots in the draft capital is going to change that up. Now, Jalen Milroe is one player we haven't really talked about. This is a player that I think is super high upside potential for fantasy football. From a situational standpoint, not necessarily a play style standpoint, he reminds me of Jalen Hurts just a few years ago. A very strong quarterback class that's different from this year's class. Obviously, this year's class isn't a strong quarterback class, but you had Jalen Hurts go in the 2nd round. He landed in the right situation. It was kind of a slow burn, but eventually when he got on the football field, he was very fantasy football relevant for the rushing upside. Jalen Milroe to me is the home run type of swing that you take in the 2nd round of rookie drafts this year. Obviously dependent on the situation that he is in, but right now, this is a player to me who's a top 20 player in my rankings. The rushing upside alone is incredible. Obviously, he still has talent. He played quarterback at Bama. You don't just do that if you're not a good quarterback. I'm going to be honest, there's going to be a lot of critics of Jalen Milroe. I see reasons to be a little bit concerned about potential development at the next level, but I don't think he's a bad quarterback. People are going to tell you he's a bad quarterback. I don't think he's bad. There's a reason why he was invited to the 1st round of the NFL draft, even though I don't think he's going to be a 1st round pick. There's a reason he's invited, and there's a reason why some teams are interested in him. So he's somebody that I'm keeping my eye on as we get to Thursday and Friday of the NFL draft. Now, tier 6, like I said, another massive tier, and we could see guys change their tiers based on the landing spots in the draft capital here, but again, another group of guys. Damian Martinez is in this tier, DJ Giddens. I have Kyle Williams, Ollie Gordon, Jack Besh, Devin Neal, Torrey Horton, and Mason Taylor. That kind of makes up this entire tier for me. Martinez, Giddens, Gordon, Neal, all of these guys could be, I don't necessarily believe locks to go day 2. I think these are more day 3 guys, maybe 4th round, 5th round picks. And if they get into those situations, I think they can be complementary pieces in their offenses and become fantasy relevant. Martinez is a guy that I think could be an early down guy. Giddens, he has some juice. He can be a big play type of player in an offense. Ollie Gordon, we've seen him be dominant before. And Devin Neal is just a solid back. The profile is pretty clean from an analytics standpoint outside of some of the RAS. Now, other than that, Torrey Horton, a very solid wide receiver sleeper, one of my favorite sleepers in this draft, if I'm being totally honest. Kyle Williams, people have woken up to Kyle Williams, but a very good player as well. Could be a player that lands in the 3rd round, maybe, of the NFL draft. Maybe he sneaks into round 2. I don't fully believe it, but if he does, that would be crazy, and you'd probably move him up your rankings. But Williams and Horton, 2 very good sleepers, good route runners, just very solid wide receivers in this year's class, and 2 guys that I'm targeting as you get later in those rookie drafts. And Mason Taylor, he's the clear tight end 3 to me in this class. There is nobody else that would be in the tier with him, and we've heard some potential buzz of him getting 1st round draft capital. Even if that isn't the case, which I don't fully believe he's a 1st round pick, he's probably going to be a guy who goes in round 2 to a specific roster that needs some tight end help. Now, getting out of those 2 massive tiers where the NFL is really going to change up those rankings, I have tier 7 where it's pretty much prospect 32 to 36, where I do feel like all of these guys are very high upside type of dart throws, or just solid dart throws that you can throw in those late 3rd rounds of your rookie drafts. I'm going to have RJ Harvey on here with Elijah Arroyo, Isaiah Bond, Alec Iomanner, and Harold Fannin Jr. Now Harvey's one of these guys that I've kind of grown to love over the draft process. The only thing is he's a little bit older, the 24 years old. He's a graduate senior. There's definitely some yellow flags there where he could have just been an older player that was beating up on some younger guys in college. So that's definitely something we're going to be paying attention to. I think Arroyo's a very solid tight end. Fannin has a very good production profile. However, he's not your typical tight end, so I think he's somebody that we need to pay attention to and see how the NFL drafts him. And then Isaiah Bond, obviously dealing with a lot of off-the-field issues. Those put aside, even though they are very serious allegations, this is a player that I do believe is talented enough to throw a dart throw on later in drafts. I didn't actually like Bond early in the draft process, where people were probably plugging him into that tier 5 of players, but where he's at now, I'm more interested in taking a shot on him. Same with Iomanner. I think this is a player that's probably going to get into a situation and be a number 2 in an offense, maybe a number 3 in an offense. We'll see how it goes overall, but these players are definitely interesting to me. Some other players that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the NFL draft is going to be LaQuint Allen. I'm interested in Will Howard and Quinn Ewers, depending on where they go and what type of draft capital that they get. Guys like Jordan James and Trevor Etienne are interesting as well. There's a ton of running backs in this class, man, that are just interesting to take a look at. So we'll see how that pans out for all of them. But overall, this is kind of how I'm viewing the top 36 prospects going into the NFL draft, knowing that these rankings are going to change when we get the landing spots in the draft capital. But overall, this is how I view these players as college prospects going to the NFL. So there you have it, folks. Like I said, the NFL draft just a few days away. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. That way you guys can get notified when we go live on Thursday night and Friday. We're going to be doing Thursday with MFGDs from Let's Talk Dynasty, and Friday is going to be with Kaleb. He's been on the channel before, now working with DLF, so we're going to have Kaleb on the channel on Friday for day 2. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Like I said, if you like today's video, hit the like button, and make sure you go join our free Discord. I did put a message in our free Discord that we might potentially be looking for an editor on this channel as we get into the redraft season this year, so make sure you go into that Discord if you have some editing experience. I am looking for somebody, so make sure you go over there, check it out, shoot me a DM, and just go in there, join our community, and meet a bunch of like-minded people that want to talk some Dynasty Fantasy Football with you, some redraft fantasy football, getting drafts with you, playing leagues with you, all that good stuff. We got a dope community here at the League FFB, and we want you to be a part of it. But all of that being said, nothing else for you guys today. So I'll see you for night 1 of the NFL draft there on that live stream. With all that being said, see you next time. Peace out.